Here is the first practice video, and today we're going to be looking at tests of near vision. Now, as you can see, my table's not very crowded. That's because there are actually fewer tests of near vision than there are tests of distance vision. Anyway, I have 4 different tests here on the table, some of which you may be familiar with and others less familiar. So we're going to start, I think, working from the most familiar to the least familiar. When you're watching this practice video, on the Learn page you will find there is a pro forma. I would like you to fill that in just so that when you come to review this work later, you know exactly what each test does and what prerequisite skills the child will need. Okay, so let's get started, and I'm going to start with the test here on the left, which is the bust test. So give me a moment, I'm just going to clear my table and bring it into shot. So here we have the bust test. So I've got 4 plastic bags on the table, and at the back there's a book. Let's forget about the book just at the moment and let's concentrate on the bags. So with the bust test, there are actually 3 different sets of cards. Now you might not actually realise this. I'm just trying to get these into focus. Here we go. So let's look at this pack first, which I'm just opening. This is the green pack. You will see that the back of the cards are green. And we've got small cards and we've got 4 large cards. So I'm just going to spread them out on the table. Get rid of those. There we go. You can see those. So this set is, in my opinion, the most commonly used ones. And that is because we can get real objects which will correspond with those pictures. So this is very useful when you've got children who are perhaps non-verbal and these objects are quite familiar to them. Okay, so we have spoon, fork, scissors and glasses. So these large cards here are really just as a check. You can either use these during the test that the child can name or match the cards that you are showing them to these key cards, if you like, or indeed you can use the real objects. I'm waggling that fork around there. Okay, so I'm just going to put these out of the way just now. And then we'll move on to the cards themselves. Now, if you've got a set of these small green cards, let's hope that somebody within your service, or if they haven't, you need to do this, make sure that you have them labelled on the back. Now, these ones have been signed, slightly strange, but there is also written in pencil. I'm not sure how well you can see it. It says, it should say fork, and it should see the card number. So this is number 3. I'll just see if I can find another one. So they've actually, they've put here, they've written B5. So they've done something very, very clever. They've actually done a code. So this is actually scissors in the corner. So it's the 5th card for scissors. So they've obviously decided that scissors are going to be B. And this one looks like E. I can't even read it, but anyway, I guess E could sort of stand for fork, like the prongs of a fork. I didn't normally do that. I would just written S for spoon and SC for scissors, or SP for spoon and S for scissors, G for glasses. If you've got a child who's particularly clever and realises that you've got them labelled, of course, on the back, then you have to be careful, because they're going to work out your code and be able to tell what the picture is without actually reading it. But if you write it small enough, then it would suggest that their acuity is actually rather good. Anyway, so how we administer this test. So the first thing that you have to do is, if I show you the cards, so these have been set out slightly differently from what I would do. What I would always do to start off with is have my cards ordered. So I want all the biggest forks and spoons together, and then glasses and scissors. So all the number ones, if you like, put together. And so there are different ways to do this. The quick way would be to give the child one card from each size. So the one card from number 1, a different card from size number 2, until they make an error, and then give them the previous number. So if they made a mistake, say at card number 5, size number 5, out of 9, as it gets smaller, then you'd go back to 4 and give them all 4 cards of number 4. Generally speaking, that's not how I would do it. I would give them all the number 1 cards, then all the number 2 cards. So you then go through all 36 cards. If I have a child who I think is doing particularly well, I would give them all of the number 1 cards. I would skip the number 2 cards and give them all of the number 3 cards. If they do that very well and very easily, I would then skip the number 4 cards and give them the number 5 cards. But then I'd probably just go from 5 to 9, unless it was really, really exceptional. So I would always do that. Now, the other thing that's very important with this test, so here we have our spoon card here, number 2, D2. So when I am giving them, I would always sit with the pile of cards face down, and I would turn it over and hand it to the child to hold. And that is very, very important. I would also always hand it to the child with the item in the same place. So I would hand it to the child, and the child would receive it like this. So the picture was in the bottom right corner, and ask them to identify it. And I would give it to them to hold, because where the child holds a card and how the child holds a card is as much, gives as much information as the actual result of the test itself. So when I give it to them to hold, I want to know how close they're going to bring it to their eye. Are they going to favour it to one eye more than the other eye? Are they going to look at it with both eyes? Are they going to close one eye when they look at it? Are they going to squint a bit, turn their head? All of those sorts of things. But I'm definitely going to want to know how far from their eyes they hold that card. So that's the way that I would do it. And it's very important that you take notes, so always have a pencil and paper handy, and you're going to write down. Now, when I'm going through those cards, there may come a point where the child says, I can't do it. And what I normally do then is I push a little bit, and I don't just accept it. I say, oh dear, can you not tell me? Oh, that's a shame. Have another little look. Try harder. So we want to just give that little bit of encouragement. You have to make sure that the child's just not actually bored with the test, rather than can't actually see it. 36 cards is quite a lot to go through, which is why I would, as I say, I would sometimes skip. Or indeed, you may have to come back and do the test over 2 visits. However, the child should always hold it and always make sure that your cards are sorted out in the correct number sequence. So that's the green set. Just going to put those away. I just wanted to show you if I can. Yes, here's the smallest one. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's got glasses in that corner. And actually that's number 8, so that's not number 9. So there's, yes, here we go. I think this one is actually the glasses in that corner. It's very small. Now, my experience of using this test is actually that children are more likely to confuse the spoon and the fork rather than the glasses and the scissors. So when the child makes an error at all, then and they make that consistently, so sometimes I'll go back. So if they make the error at number 7 between the spoon and the fork, I will go on to number 8 perhaps with the scissors and glasses, and I'll come back and try number 7 again. So I don't just give them one chance, I would give them a couple of chances to get the scissors and the fork and the spoon correct. That's the green set. Now, there is no difference in the test other than the pictures and what you use. All I can say is that the green set certainly is the most commonly used, I think. But now we're on to the blue set, and they're more geometric shapes. And actually, if you can get children used to these shapes, I'm not doing very well today getting this in shot. If you can get children used to these shapes, that's good, because these shapes are used in many other tests. So if you can get the children used to them, that is very good. So again, we've got the circle, the house, the square, and the apple, although children can give it their own names as well, and that's absolutely fine. And again, we have our playing cards, and you can see that the background is blue, which is why we call them the blue set. And this one's been labelled much better. So we've got S1, so that means it's the big square. And I would also have it in the bottom right corner. So there is the square, and then the second one. So as I say, I'd have square, circle, house and heart all muddled up, not obviously in the same order each and every time, but the pack has been put together in that way. And I just shuffle through. Here we've got, here we have the house, and that's house 4, H4. So that's easily labelled in that one. And then we've got A8 written on the back of this card, and you can see the apple, I hope, in the bottom corner. Okay, so that is the blue set. And finally, we're going to move on to the red set as well. Don't worry if you don't have all of these sets within your service, but I just want to show you what is available. So in this set here, move up. Again, some fairly easily recognisable pictures. We've got the clock, we've got the clock, we've got the wheel, we've got the mug, and we've got the flower. So these are the key cards that I've put out here, and here on the back is my red set, as you can see there, and they have been written in fairly small pencil. Into I'll show you here. So we've got, yes, it's been E5. So we have the clock. And then we have, F3, we have the clock. Obviously, when you label them, you can label them any way that you wish. So that's the red set there as well. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is just show you how the actual scoring goes. Now, often with the bus test, people panic a lot when they see the booklet for scoring. So let's bring this booklet over and into shot here. I wonder if I can just... So we're going to look, people really panic when they see these tables. So we're going to look at the comparative table here at the bottom of the page, this one here. And I hope that you can see it quite clearly. So I bring it a bit more centrally there and get these things out of the way. So when the child can name the last 4 sets of cards correctly, that is their threshold. So if we look down the side here, we've got number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 and 9 are together. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that the child got all of number 7 correct. Then we would be looking across. Text size is typescript, and then that is the equivalent of N10 to N12. So we would be saying that that was, of course, it would be the threshold. That's the last set that they got correct, that their threshold size would be N10 to N12. Now, I did say at the beginning that it was really important that the child held the card so that you knew how far away they were holding it. So at the top here, we've got 4 testing distances, 40 centimetres, 20 centimetres, which they regard as standard distances, and then short distances of 8 centimetres or 4 centimetres. So you need to also think about how far away the child was holding that card. Now, you let them hold it where it's comfortable for them, and you'll perhaps notice as the test progresses that that distance becomes shorter. We still allow that, and we keep going until they make an error. So let's just imagine, for this sake of having an example, that we stopped at number 7 and the child was holding the card roughly about 8 centimetres. Now, if you think it was at 6 centimetres, which we don't have here, then I would then take it back down to look at the column for 4 centimetres. I wouldn't go up the way. Anyway, so let's imagine it was about 8 centimetres, and you will see that on number 7, if I work across, then that gives a value of 0.1. Now, if I follow this 0.1 up, now there's not always a direct equivalent, but there is in this case. I picked this example deliberately. At 20 centimetres, you can find 0.1 in a different column or a different line, and then we're going to work our way across, and what this test suggests, at 20 centimetres, the child would need N14 or 18 size of print. If they were going to hold it at 40 centimetres, the suggestion therefore is that child is going to need N36 size of print. So it can give us an idea of the different sizes of print that a child may use. Now, obviously, if the child was able to read then the bust test would not be my first choice of test. That's because you will notice it's a single symbol test. There's only one symbol presented on the card at a time, and therefore crowding is not taken into consideration. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, there is a distance version of the bust test, and I'll show you that when we look at distance tests. So for now, let's move on. And this is the next test that I want to show you. And this is a test that will probably be most commonly used in many services when we're looking at assessing near vision. So it's the McClure reading type for children, and it's by Clement Clarke International. And it's London, England is the place of publication. So when we open it up, if you haven't seen this one, we have an introduction, and it's based actually a very old test now, Ladybird reading book words. So at the beginning, we've got a couple of pages of just drawings and words which you can use with children just to check their reading ability. Of course, they're going to might use the pictures as well, so but it might be helpful. And then we've got some others as well. We've got some selected words which you can use with the children, but please be cautious about what age of child that you use that with. You will find that some of the words are quite difficult to read, so it wouldn't be for a very young children there. You need to have quite a good level of reading ability. Now, once we then flip over to this page, hopefully this is going to stand up. Yes, sort of. Anyway, once we flip over to this page, it's the first page of our text. Now, you will notice down the right-hand side there are various tabs with grade 1, grade 2 down to grade 7. Just ignore the one at the bottom. We'll talk about that in another video. So the reading here is being graded according to the age of the child. What I'd like you to do is totally ignore that. Ignore the age group. You, as a teacher of visual impairment, need to make up your own mind about what grade is suitable for the child. The biggest thing to remember when you're using this assessment, it is not an assessment of reading. You need to make sure that the grade that you pick is well within the child's reading capability, not their threshold. You're not assessing their reading, you're assessing their vision. And if they can't read the words, then this test is not appropriate for them. So if I'm testing a pupil in primary 3, for example, I may use grade 2, or indeed I may just use grade 1. And again, I do try and stand this book up. This one's not very good at standing. Oh, it is better there actually. There we go. I stand it up like that. And when I'm doing the assessment, let's just use grade 1 for now. I always start with the largest size of text. There we go, down at the bottom. And I will hold it up like this and I'll say to the child, can you read a little bit of this one? We're going to start here. So I will indicate the start, but that's it. I don't indicate anything else. Again, as the test progresses, I encourage the child, if they want to move closer or indeed to hold the book, that's fine. And again, I'm looking and observing how that book's being held, where it's being held, what the eyes are doing, what the head position is doing as well. And I get them to read the text. When we get to the bottom of the page, then we start at the top and we read N36. Interestingly, some children do say to me, as we're reading, do you want me to read N36 next? And I kind of know that obviously their acuities are really rather good if they can read that. If they can read that, we might skip some, or we might not read the whole thing. It just depends, and you learn that through experience and through doing. But we're always making sure that the child is reading carefully. I also sometimes tell children to slow down. It's not a race. But we're also listening for fluency in reading, and obviously text becoming closer and the reading becoming more hesitant, which would suggest if they've read fluently in the larger sizes that the issue is not with the reading, it is actually with the vision. And we stop when the child is making too many errors. Again, they may stop suddenly, and I often say, can you give me the first word in the line, and so on. I also want to check to see how good they are at moving from line to line, make sure that no lines are skipped either. And when it comes to the end, where they can no longer read successfully, I would record what they were able to read, the smallest size, but then I would ask them what size was most comfortable for them. Now, depending on the age and stage of the child, I would not give them the full section to choose from, because many children, especially those who find reading challenging just for reading, not because of vision, they will always choose the largest size. So if I had a child, for example, who could perhaps read N8, I would say, what was the best size on this page? And they might choose N12, or they might select N14, or they might choose N18, but I wouldn't give them this last page, because they're probably going to say N48, but that's only because they think that there's less there. And of course you realise that yes, there is less there, but if you were reading a book, then you'd have more pages. So I'm rather cautious about offering them the full range, but I would always record the threshold, but I would never make that recommendation that that's the print size that they should read. I would then ask the child, a young person, what was best for them. Also, depending on the age of the child, I would say to them, is it because there's more space between the lines? And that's something that you can then go on and assess in a different way. So that's the McClure reading type. The text now is quite old, so some of the themes in the text are a little bit old-fashioned, but it's what it is, and it's the best that we have at the moment. You'll notice that in the text that there are two different types of font, including at times New Roman at the bottom, which is not something that we would recommend for using with children either, but as I say, that is what we have. And you'll see even in grade 3 they're still talking about daddy, which some children might find quite immature and babyish, but it's something you have to bear in mind. Okay, so very quickly, last two assessments that I'm going to show you are very old, probably not within your service, but based on Thomas the Tank Engine and Peter Rabbit. These have been, Peter Rabbit's been done by Keeler, and it's very similar to the McClure reading type that I've just shown you, in terms of it's a story. We've got little pictures, but don't really help too much, but you will notice that the text has got N48, N36, and so on. So we can start reading the story, and then when we get to the stage where it's too difficult, then we know that we've reached our threshold. But again, you need to look to see if those words are actually within the child or young person's reading abilities. And the pictures don't really help a great deal with the text. And for some children, that might be much more motivating than reading McClure. If you want to try these, you can certainly borrow them from the Scottish Sensory Centre library. Just let me see the Thomas the Tank Engine one. Again, each part of the text has got the value there. So it's very short, that's only 2 pages. if you had someone who was very keen on trains, this might be more motivating for them to read. And that concludes the presentation on near vision tests.